Alright, we're going the distance. Let's see how many fucking shows I've finished I can briefly review today. Zoku Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei. I think I already had Zetsubou Sensei the first season on here with a score, because I've watched it more recently. It's a really fucking, black comedy about a bunch of broken characters in a high school setting. Like it's basically a parody of the idea of the show about a guy and a bunch of high school girls, like a harem comedy. Like it's a parody of Negima, but where everyone's fucked up and broken. And of course the aesthetics are completely fucking out there because it's a Shaft series at the height of Shaft madness. The second season I remember being significantly better than the first because Zetsubou Sensei in general is hit or miss on the comedy. Like, as much as I love the characters and I love the idea of the show, the actual jokes can sometimes be grating or just, not funny. Zoku Zetsubou, showing a more experimental direction, was more willing to break away from just the normal gag routines and do something weird, and that made it a lot more entertaining. It also had better production values. So, yeah, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. Hatenko Yugi. This is a really odd show that no one remembers. It was 10 episodes long that were adapted randomly from the manga. Like, it's a 10-volume manga and they just picked random fucking chapters and adapted them. And for some reason, I really liked the main character and the dialogue in the show. Like, it's got kind of a snippy back and forth dialogue kind of thing, like a witty dialogue, whatever. It's about this young haughty girl who runs away to go on adventures, and she's got these two beefcake stud dudes who follow her around. Yeah, it's like a shoujo manga adventure story, and I remember just kind of digging the characters and dialogue, so I went to go read the manga, and I bought the first 2 volumes, and it felt completely different, and I didn't like it at all. And the thing about the anime is that, again, it's just a bunch of random episodes. It really doesn't feel like it goes anywhere or concludes at all, so it's not worth watching. I'd probably give it, a strong 5 to a light 6 if I watched it today. I highly doubt I'd be nearly as interested as I was for whatever reason at the time, because I don't really remember anything about it other than my impressions. Kurenai is another very strange show from the same guy who made Red Garden, and this one is interesting in that it's a light novel adaptation that tries to put as much distance between itself and the original light novel as possible. Like, the director really went all out on turning it into something new. Basically, it's about this high school kid who lives by himself in a shitty rundown apartment complex, and he's got a blade in his arm that's some kind of curse, and he works as basically a beater for a crime organization. He beats people up to get money, that the people who haven't paid, and he ends up having to babysit this little girl who's being hidden from her fucking weird fucked up rich family. So it's kind of a fish out of water story for the little girl, a coming of age story for the main character, and also just a fun story about them and their weird other people in the apartment complex who are all total fucking weirdos. So there's a lot going on, and the dialogue is really solid. It's this show and Red Garden were both recorded with the dialogue recorded before the animation was done, which is not how anime is usually done. That's how Western cartoons are done, but Ko Matsuo, the director, being a Westaboo, decided to do it that way. And there's one episode where there's a 3-minute musical section that's really cool. The show just has a lot of interesting ideas. I would say that once the plot picks up, it feels a little bit out of nowhere because the show has gone so far out of its way to try and ignore the original plot and do its own thing that when it actually kicks in, it feels a little weird. And if you watch the OVA, they made a 1-episode OVA a year later that was packaged with one of the light novels and actually is in the style of the light novels, and it is horrible. It very immediately gives you the sense of what the books are actually like. So unfortunately, the story feels a little inconcluded at the end of the anime. I felt like I wanted a second season until I found out where the light novels actually go, and I was like, oh, okay, this show's nothing like the source material. But yeah, I really liked the show. I was a big defender of it at the time. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10 if I watched it today. Because I still remember a lot of fond things about it, and I'm curious to watch it again. Shigo Fumi, this was an interesting one. It's sort of similar to girl god of death, and that like this is a show about this girl who brings people these letters, I think from beyond the grave or some shit like that. I don't remember. But like most of the show is episodic storylines where it's like this main character just kind of showing up to interact with people at like a low point in their lives. And again, I'm not a big fan of that kind of show. I've never been into like episodic stories. They're fine, I guess. But the weird thing about Shigofumi is that it later on develops an actual narrative surrounding the main girl and like getting into her backstory and what's really going on with her. And it gets really weird. So it's interesting, but like even at the time I gave it like a 6, and I can't see giving it higher than that now. Like I don't think I'd feel very differently about it. Kanokon. This is probably my favorite like harem comedy show. Kanokon is just a high school rom-com about a little boy who is surrounded by women who want to fuck him really badly, but like they are not coy about this fact. The main girl who's in love with them is this big titty bitch who turns into a fucking kitsune or whatever, and she just wants to fuck him. That's all she wants. All she wants to do is fuck him. She just wants to ride his dick. And he's pretty resistant to it, but like anytime they actually feel like they're gonna go through with it, he's like, getting himself mentally prepared, but something always cuts them off. It turns out that, yeah, she's like got like a fox spirit inside of her, and there's like this whole other semi-dramatic narrative about all these different like animal spirit people. There's this dog girl who falls in love with them. She also wants the dick, so it's kind of a love triangle between him and these two girls, who are both basically trying to rape him. And it's pretty entertaining. I like the show because unlike most harems where it's just a whole bunch of like guys walking in on girls in their panties and bullshit, like this is a show where the girls are thirsty. They just like all they want is legit to fuck this dude. Like, and there's nothing coy about it. There's no hesitation. They'll just get their tits out and put them in his fucking face and be like, please fuck me, and it has a really good ending. It kind of goes harem end in a way, but I think this is like my favorite of this kind of show. Like if I had to pick a fucking bog standard harem show to watch, I'd pick Kanokon. It has more heart than most of them. It has better characters. It's still probably like a 6 at best, but like, that's better than I can say about most of the genre. Kyoran Kazoku Nikki. This is very much in the Futakoi alternative vein of like total bathos, weird mood shifts, weird all over the place characterization. It's a story about a guy, a normal guy who ends up becoming the father in a de facto family of space criminals. Like the wife is like the greatest criminal in the galaxy, and she's like this weird lolly cat girl wife. And then there's like they have all these like weird eccentric family like children that they adopt, one of whom's a lion who can talk, one of them's a robot, one of them's a giant jellyfish that can't even talk, and one's just a little lolly girl. It's about them trying to form a family and having all these weird adventures and stuff, and like it's really all over the place. Like sometimes it's just wacky happy fun time, and then like snap, now it's hardcore drama, and like it does not give a fuck. It will go in every direction. So it's a little weird and hard to watch, and not every episode is great, but I think overall it's really charming. The characters are pretty memorable. Like, it's a show that I want to like, and I'm glad that sometimes I can. I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. Hinamari Sketch S365. I already talked about Hinamari Sketch. Season 2 is even better than Season 1. Probably a 9 out of 10. Strike Witches. This is an interesting one. Strike Witches is like basically the most shameless fan service show that isn't a fan service show. Like, Strike Witches, at its core, is a show about a bunch of young girls who have to fight aliens. Like, they join this platoon, and, like, the main character girl is, like, the newbie, she's very young, but she ends up joining this team of, like, aerial fighters to go take on these aliens. And the show has, like, epic music, really nice production values. It's pretty to look at. It's a good, like, friendship story. It's about all these characters, like, getting to flesh out their personalities a little bit, seeing them interact, and seeing them fight. And, like, it's a normal action show, except, also, it's in a world where women don't wear pants. Ever. There's just no pants for women in this universe. And so, like, and then, like, there's lots of hot spring scenes and stuff like that. So, like, there's hardcore fan service, but the show never addresses it. It's, like, all non-diegetic fan service. Like, all of it is just happening to the viewer, but, like, it's not actually in the show. It's fucking weird. Um, and I understand harping on it for that, and, like, deservedly so, but, like, the fact that it's so, like, good in spite of that, that, like, if you ignore the fan service, it's just, like, a decent action show with a bunch of cute characters, like, I ended up enjoying it, and like season 1 is all right. I'd probably give it like a strong 6 light 7. Like, it's nothing special, but season 2 really picks up and gets really awesome. It's probably like an 8 out of 10. So I'd say it's worth watching season 1 just to get to season 2. Um, Tetsuo Birdie Decode, or Birdie the Mighty Decode, one of the first A1 Pictures shows, like their first full productions, and it's one of their best. It's about this guy gets like basically hit with like a meteor or something, and he has like this space, I think she's a space pirate or a space cop, I don't remember which, but Birdie is this like, she's a badass space fighter, and she ends up in this guy's body, so basically he can transform into her and vice versa, but like so it's like a really weird dynamic between them. The thing is that everything involving Birdie and her like fighting aliens and shit is really cool, but like the guy is just a boring high school character with like a boring life. So I remember thinking this show was like, sometimes it'd be really fun and sometimes it'd be fucking boring. And I don't really think I liked where the like when the plot picked up and all that. So it's probably like a 6 out of 10, but overall an okay show. Natsume Yoojin Cho. This is one of my favorite Iyashikei shows, if you can call it that. I mean, it's Iyashikei in that it's very slow and somber and very Mono no Aware feeling, you know, but like it's also a like ghost detective show. Basically, the main character has this book of names that his grandma collected from all these spirits on this mountainside that he's moved to. And spirits need their name in order to like have a sense of self, and so basically she left this whole mountain in a state of disrepair spiritually, and so he decides to give all the names back to all the monsters, and he's joined by this this big demon cat thing that wants to eat him and take the book, but they're kind of friends. And it's just like this slow kind of sad story about this kid who's like really antisocial, or like just doesn't make any friends because he can see spirits and it's fucking weird, and like he's just really lonely, and like he's adventuring with all these weird things that like he doesn't understand, and it can be really cute, it can be scary at times, it can be feelsy, but overall it's very like relaxing and pleasant. I watched 2 seasons of this while on the couch, and I just like melted into the couch. Like, I was half awake, I was like peeking in and out of fucking sleep, but it was a good time. I'd probably give it a strong 7 to a light 8. A Certain Magical Index is a very entertaining light novel series that's basically this guy tried to come up with like the guy who writes this never runs out of ideas. He's just a dude who has a million ideas, and he concocted a story that would let him have as many of those ideas as possible. It takes place in a town that's the town of science, and science produces people who can use superpowers for some reason, but then there's also magic in the church, and they've got a different set of powers, and everyone's got a million kinds of powers, and they all interact and bounce off of each other in weird ways, and each arc, you know, like explores a different set of powers and heroes and villains. Nothing about like the character writing is all that strong. Like, everyone's passable, you know, Misaka's alright, main guy's whatever. But there's some fun moments. Like, mostly it's about the ideas, and I think that really like the show has lots of good ideas, and it's pretty entertaining and cool. I'd give it like a 7 probably. I liked the show overall. Umi Neko no Naku Koroni. This was the spiritual sequel to Higurashi. It uses a similar structure where it keeps resetting a story, but this one's got a lot more meta going on in it. The anime of this was unfortunately very unpopular. Now, like, the Higurashi anime got a lot of shit from fans of the video game for being inaccurate and not containing enough of the story, but overall I think its success like outshined that, and it got big, mostly on the strength of the cute girls. Umineko didn't have the same cute girl strength, and the visual novel fans were even more angry about it because it skips out even more shit of these unbelievably long visual novels that it's based on. So, like, I thought the anime was really solid, though. Like, I was enjoying it almost as much as Higurashi. It's a little bit more uneven and iffy in places, but, like, it's a solid mystery show with some fun concepts and characters, and I really would have liked another season because it has no conclusion at all, and I wanted it to have its Kai. I wanted it to have its like second part, but since it was so like not popular at all, it just kind of languished and died, and that's a shame. I'd probably give the show like a light 7. I think it's an entertaining time, and I really would have liked a second season. And I named my band after it. Trial of the Golden Witch is one of the chapters of the story. So there you go. Kashern Sins. I was way into this show when it came out. It's a dark adventure series about a post-apocalypse, like a recent apocalypse where Kashern apparently caused the end of the world, but he has no memories of it. And he's traveling this world, just seeing all the broken people and robots that inhabit it. Unbelievably beautiful artwork and design work from Yoshihiko Umakoshi, who's kind of a legend, but I think this is by far his best work. I legit think this is the most beautiful show ever. Like, Kashern Sins is, in my opinion, the best-looking TV anime of all time, because it's so stylistically gorgeous, so beautifully directed. The action scenes are really well-timed and, like, really fascinating in the way that they're structured and directed. And it's got a phenomenal soundtrack from Kaoru Wada. It's just aesthetically perfect, and, like, the story isn't, like, super interesting, but it's captivating. It's got this weird energy to it, like, it's very slow and methodical, but beautiful, and, like, it's exploring these different aspects of the psyche. Not necessarily in depth, but, you know, it's capturing something kind of interesting, and the story that eventually comes out of it is also pretty good. So, yeah, I think it's a really solid show. I'd probably give it an 8, maybe even a 9 if I like it more than I even realize. Moving on. Zoku Natsume Youjin Cho. It's just another season of that. Same impressions as the first season. Sengoku Basara. Wow, I forgot about this show. I haven't thought about it in a while. Sengoku Basara is an over-the-top, insane action, almost action comedy. Like, it's not comedy in that there's no jokes, but, like, the ridiculousness of the spectacle is clearly intended to be humorous. This show came out... At the time, I thought of this as, like, in the vein of Gurren Lagann, because it's, like, every character is an over-the-top badass, and there's, like, crazy powers and, like, explosions of energy when characters clash. It's very hot-blooded. But the reality is that it's more of a Fujoshi show. It's more about, like, pretty boys, and, like, you know, the hot-bloodedness is more meant to be, like, the rivalry between the two main characters is meant to be, like, a gay baiting kind of thing. I just hadn't thought of it that way at the time, but, like, in retrospect, it's kind of obvious. But it's very over-the-top and energetic and fun. It's not always great. Like, the actual story is stupid. The only real reason to watch it is to watch crazy shit happen. Really, you could watch episode 1 and 2 and not watch the rest of the show, because you're gonna get, like, the hypest moments out of that, and there's no reason to continue. But, you know, it's alright. I'd probably give it, like, a light 6 if I watched it again. Kanan. This is a show I'm terrified to watch again, because when Kanan came out, I was way into it, because I love girls with guns, I love Yuri shipping, and the show is really solidly made. It has awesome fight direction, directed by, what's his name? The dude who does all the best fucking fight shows, like Sword of the Stranger and fucking, oh god, and Snow White with red hair, and like a bunch of other shit. Everything he does is amazing fight scenes. He also did fucking Under the Dog, which was a huge disappointment, but I don't think that's his fault. Kanan was like everything I'd wanted from a B-Train Girls with Guns show and never got. But I'd watched like half of it while it was airing, and I'd convinced a bunch of people to watch it, and everybody told me that they thought it was shit. And then I finally finished it, and I thought the last few episodes were pretty retarded, but up until that point, it's very entertaining. The thing is, I spent a lot of money on Kanan merchandise, and in retrospect, I am absolutely sure I won't like the show as much as I did when I first saw it. So it's probably like a 7 or 8. I'm hoping it's still at least a 7 or 8, and that I'm not like a total idiot. But I'm sure I won't love it the way I did back then. I thought it was like a 9 and one of my favorites and stuff. Eden of the East. Oh, that's already got a rating. Never mind. GA, Geijutsuka Art Design Class. This is a very cute, quaint little Punimoe series. It's high school girls in an art class doing art. It's very similar to Hinamari Sketch, But whereas that show focuses more on the everyday life aspect of the characters, this one is more at school and more about art. It's like about them trying to make art. And it's really cute and a lot of fun. Both the anime and manga are really solid. It's not very memorable. Like, I've seen the whole show twice, and I couldn't tell you any specific thing that happens in it. I just really like the aesthetic and the characters and the overall tone of it. So I'd probably give it, like, a light 7. It's better than a lot of its ilk, but not good enough to, like, stand among the best. Saki, this is like a sports anime, except it's about mahjong, and this is where we cross the threshold that I talked about with Bamboo Blade, where that show was like kind of getting into now sports shows or moe shows. Saki takes it the next step. There's still kind of guy characters in the show, but they fall by the wayside. It really is about cute girls playing mahjong. Everyone has superpowers. It's way over the top, and it's really fun to watch. I enjoyed the hell out of Saki when I watched it before. I don't know how I'd feel about it now. I'd probably give it a 7. It's got really fun, memorable characters and moments, but nothing that's like deep or like gonna stick with you forever. It's more about the hype of watching it. So yeah, it's not a thinking show. It gets lots of people into mahjong, though. Like, lots of otaku got really into mahjong through that show. And there's sort of a legend about how the more you understand mahjong, the more batshit fucking insane the show becomes, because it's, like, such a weird, hyper-real version of mahjong. Anyway, Seitokai no Ichizon. This is almost like a bottle show. Like, most of it takes place in a student council room with this guy and these 3 student council girls, like, having conversations. Usually like pretty meta otaku oriented conversations, because the guy's a hyper otaku, and he basically envisions this as his harem. All of them are like, no, like they're acting like, oh, they beat up on him. Like, everyone is intellectually superior to him in this room. However, as the show goes on, you realize each of them has an affection for him on some level. This is a show that surprised me, because even though it's very boilerplate premise, very below average production values, it's pretty endearing. The jokes get old sometimes, but the characters are kind of nice, and it's got a good attitude about it. It doesn't feel sleazy or anything like most shows in its genre would, but at the same time, it's just kind of whatever. I'd probably give it a 6. It was a show I was surprised I actually finished, and I still haven't seen season 2, but it's better than it looks, basically. Aoihara, Sweet Blue Flowers. This is a Yuri drama that is very heavy on the melodrama. I was not into this show. I had read a few volumes of the manga before and thought they were okay. And then from the same author who later did Hodo Musuko, which I enjoyed a lot more, Aoihara is like, it's just too slow for its own good. It's like really meandering, really plotting, really melodramatic, and I couldn't stomach it. I think I gave it a 6 at the time. I'd probably give it lower now because I'm even more annoyed with melodrama. I'd probably give it like a 4 or a 5 if I watched it now. I'd probably treat it somewhat similarly to Scum's Wish, though it's not as trashy as that show. Asobi ni Ikuyo. This is the show that was translated as Cat Planet Cuties. Surprisingly entertaining, like, fan service action comedy genre thing. Like, it's very much a sci-fi trope exploration. Sci-fi and, like, action movie tropes. Like, it's all about getting these characters into situations where they'll be, like, on a speedboat, dual-wielding rocket launchers, fighting off other speedboats kind of thing, Like, it really embraces this, like, 80s film aesthetic, and even has references to a lot of, like, classic action and sci-fi movies, while also being, like, this goofy, fan service comedy show. But it's really endearing. I think the show has a lot of heart, and I think it's been brushed under the rug by a lot of people as just like, oh, it's a fan service show. There's a lot more to it than that. It's pretty fucking fun. I'd probably give it like a strong 6 to a light 7 if I watched it today. Toaru Kagaku no Railgun. So, a certain scientific railgun is a spin-off of Index, starring the most popular character, Misaka, and her friends. And it starts off as, like, a 4 girls in middle school show, just about these girls, like, who have superpowers and their everyday lives, which sometimes involves some action. And it's really entertaining at first. Like, the characters are surprisingly interesting. They have a great dynamic and great chemistry together. The production value is really good. There's some great fight scenes and shit. And I really liked it at first. But then as it starts to develop a plot, it just has way too much, like, technobabble that doesn't make any sense, or, like, just narratives that are weird, like, character motivations become confusing. There's, like, the last few episodes is just a non-stop train of expository dialogue, and I could not fucking stand it. So, it's like a show that starts off as, like, a strong 7 to a light 8, and ends up being, like, a strong 5 to a light 6, so I'd probably rank it somewhere in the middle. I'd probably give it, like, a strong 6 to a light 7 overall. I'm not sure what I would rate it if I watched it today. It's been a long time. Bakato Testo Sho Kanjou. This is a show that I never got that into. I didn't find enough of it funny. Sometimes it was funny. I liked the visual aesthetic. I liked the premise of, like, it's a high school where they like they do like weird video gamey shit as part of their tests. I don't even really remember that much, but like this was one that like everyone else seemed to like more than me. I don't know. It kind of became like normie popular at some point, and I was never that into it. I'd probably give it like a strong 5 to a light 6, which is pretty much what I rank like every Silverlink show other than Watamote. Like they're almost all strong 5 light 6 to me. I don't know why. Strike Witches 2. I already talked about this. It's way bigger and better than Strike Witches 1. They really embraced the, like, popcorn action flick, like, capabilities of the series with this. Every character gets their own episode to shine and be a badass. It's really fun. I'd probably give that, like, an 8. A strong 8. Letter B. This is a weird one. It's like a shonen series about this kid who becomes a, like, delivery boy, in this really gorgeous, like, desert world. Beautiful character designs and artwork, but the story is really, really slow and not that interesting. Like, I remember giving this, like, a 6 and kind of struggling to finish it, and I gave up in the middle of season 2. So, like, if I watched it now, I'd probably give it, like, a 5 and just not even bother finishing it. Seiko no Quasar, one of my favorites. Quasar is, like, way the raunchiest, most audacious show ever. Like, it's a violent action show with lots of, like, edgy story ideas, but doesn't take itself seriously at all. Constant fan service, because characters literally suck breast milk in order to use their powers. So there's tits everywhere, tons of raunchy fucking scenes. Just, it's tasteless. It's utterly tasteless, and totally embraces that. Awesome fucking ending videos and shit, and I love it. I really love it. I can't pretend the whole show is great. Like, there are definitely episodes that are not as interesting, but the scenes that really stand out are so ingrained into my memory that, like, I can never forget them. So I'd probably give the show, like, an 8. I don't know. I don't know if I could give it higher than an 8, because so much of it is, like, just kind of dumb, but, like, it's great. Angel Beats. I liked this show a lot more than I expected to. It's very uneven. It's the product of trying to shove a much bigger story into a much smaller space. It has lots of bathos, episodes that are all fun and games until someone horrifically dies kind of thing. But, like, it's pretty charming, and, like, the concept is just so weird of, like, characters being trapped in limbo, and they can, like, freely die at random and stuff like that. It's got lots of good hijinks, and the ending is really emotional. It's really well done. I cried my fucking eyes out the first time I saw it. I don't know if I'd feel as strongly today. I don't know if it would get me the way it got me back then. So I'm gonna say 7 or 8. But I could be wrong. It could be lower if it's not as good as I remember. Hanamaru Kindergarten. This is a show that should have been more experimental. This came out at an odd point in Gainax's career, where, like, basically after Gurren Lagann, they had this period of shows that would be, like, a mishmash of different directors working on different episodes. Like, Panty and Stocking is the most obvious one, where, like, every half episode is, like, a different team, the different people in charge, and, like, it goes in all these weird experimental directions. And then they did something similar with Dantalian no Shoka, and also Hanamaru Kindergarten. But the weird thing about Hanamaru is that, like, the baseline show is mostly just the same kind of shit. It's like, there's these little girls in an elementary school and the people who are watching over them, and it's, like, comedy between them. it's not that engaging. But then like the OP and ED, or the ED would be different every single time, and the EDs would be like these weird experimental pieces that are totally out there. The EDs are more interesting than the show. Like, go watch all the Hanamaru Kindergarten endings. Don't bother with the show itself. It's not really worth it. I'd probably give it like a strong 5 to a light 6. But, and like a lot of that's on the strength of the endings, because the comedy's just not that strong. Katana Gatari. This is a show I had big problems with. I mean, I could go into it. Like, I have a blog post from way back when I watched the show where I really deep dove my problems with it. But, like, this is a show that occasionally had great episodes and great ideas, and then other times just felt so stupid and lazy. Like, it just felt like Nisio seen trolling. Like, because that's kind of what he does. He likes to, like, fuck with meta and fuck with trolling and stuff, but he doesn't always do it in an interesting way. Sometimes he really has something to say, and sometimes I feel like he's just getting away with doing whatever the fuck he wants, because, ooh, it's post-structuralist, and it's like, oh, but it's not interesting, you know? So, like, I really hate the ending. I thought the whole last episode was fucking stupid. I hate a lot of things about it. You can go read my post if you really want to see me get in depth. Just look up "My Sword Story Can't Possibly Be This Dull" on Google and you'll get it. But yeah, I have a lot of problems with Katana Gatari. I would like to rewatch it because I'm interested in seeing if the same things bother me still. I won't be surprised if they do, because like the thing about the Katana Gatari is like it's not surprising if it's not that great, because it was based on the fucking Nisio Isin wrote a novel every month for a year, like as a stunt, and that was the series. And like, I'm not surprised that some of the ideas are stupid, but like, you know, maybe if I watched it again, I'd feel differently. I don't feel up to it because it's like 12 fucking hours. But yeah, that's it for this episode, everybody. See you next time.